Well, Captain Rice says, extending her hand to the crystalline being, humanity hasn't forgotten you. Elder Gaiselos hesitates, his crystalline appendage hovering inches from Raya's outstretched palm. The luminar's inner light pulses in what Dr. Lin later identifies as their equivalent of confusion. You would defy the coalition. The harmonic voice resonates through the chamber. For beings you have only just discovered. Reyes maintains her position, hand steady in the cool, mineral-scented air of the cavern. Humanity has a long history of defying authority when conscience demands it. The contact, when it finally happens, sends a gentle vibration up Raya's arm, not unpleasant, but alien in every sense. The luminar's touch feels like holding a crystal glass that's somehow alive and humming with energy. Around them, the remaining luminar gather closer, their dimming bodies creating a constellation of fading stars in the vast underground chamber. Some are barely brighter than embers, their once brilliant forms now struggling to maintain coherence. Dr. Lin approaches, medical scanner in hand. Captain, their energy signatures are degrading rapidly. According to these readings, the youngest members of their species will begin terminal crystalline breakdown within 2 months. Our children fade first, Elder Hylos confirms, gesturing towards smaller crystalline formations clustered at the chamber's edge. Without sufficient magnetic resonance, they cannot maintain structural integrity. Lieutenant Commander Jackson surveys the cavern with a tactical eye. Ma'am, these tunnels extend for hundreds of kilometers. How many luminar remain? Once, we numbered millions. Xylos explains, his harmonics dropping to a somber octave. Now perhaps 10,000. We have condensed our population to the regions where the magnetic field remains strongest, but even these fail more each day. Science Officer Dr. Lin activates a holographic display showing the planet's deteriorating magnetic field. The core instability is accelerating. At current rates of degradation, complete field collapse will occur in approximately 11 Earth months. Rice studies the projection, her mind already racing through potential solutions, options, technologies that might help. The Galactic Coalition, with their vast combined knowledge, had declared this situation hopeless, a natural extinction event best left to run its course. Elder Dylos, she says finally, would your people be willing to share your scientific understanding of the problem? Perhaps together we might find a solution the coalition overlooked. The elder's crystalline form shimmers with an intensity that momentarily brightens the chamber. You truly mean to attempt intervention. The coalition representatives spent less than 1 cycle here before declaring our situation irreversible. Humans are stubborn, Dr. Patel interjects, already scanning the crystal formations with his engineering tools. And we specialize in solving problems others consider impossible. As if on cue, Raya's communication device chimes with an incoming transmission from the horizon. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice comes through clearly despite the interference from the surrounding crystals. Captain, the coalition representatives have just sent an unauthorized transmission to their headquarters. They're reporting our contact with the Luminar as a protocol violation. Rice exchanges glances with her officers, each of them aware of what this means. The moment they decided to investigate the signal, they'd crossed a line. By speaking with the Luminar, they'd broken coalition non-interference directives. There would be consequences. Acknowledged, Lieutenant. Inform Earth Command of our situation and request scientific support. We're going to need it. She turns back to Elder Xylos, her resolve hardening. Time is something you don't have much of. Luckily, making the most of limited time is something humans excel at. For the first time in centuries, hope resonates through the Luminar caverns, a frequency that requires no translation. Lieutenant Commander Jackson, Security Chief, is the last to stand. Well, he says with a crooked smile, we always wanted to make our mark on galactic history. The room erupts in nervous laughter that quickly transforms into determined discussion. Crew members cluster around holographic displays, already brainstorming solutions, while Captain Rice watches with quiet pride. The coalition representatives, led by Senior Envoy Thrix, corner Rice as she exits the mess hall. Fritz's 4 eyes blink in vertical succession, a sign of extreme agitation among the Morgan species. Captain Rice, you realize this constitutes a Level 1 breach of Coalition membership protocols. Your species has been part of Galactic society for merely 15 years. Earth cannot afford to become known as the planet that disregards established wisdom. Rice doesn't slow her pace as she heads toward the bridge. With respect, Envoy Thrix, perhaps established wisdom needs occasional questioning. You've seen the Luminar. They're sentient beings facing extinction through no fault of their own. Their biological dependence on specific magnetic frequencies makes them evolutionarily non-viable. Thrix counters, multiple limbs gesturing in frustration. The resources required to reverse their situation outweigh their potential contribution to galactic advancement. This calculation was made centuries ago. Ray stops abruptly, causing the taller alien to nearly collide with her. That's where we fundamentally disagree. On Earth, we don't measure the value of life based on utility. In the ship's communication center, Rise authorizes a final transmission to Earth Command before the Coalition can jam their channels. Her message is brief but clear. The Horizon will remain to assist the Luminar. They accept any consequences for their actions, but request scientific support rather than military intervention. Dr. Patel finds her hours later in her quarters, reviewing geological surveys of the planet's deteriorating magnetic field. Captain, engineering has completed initial assessments. It's worse than we thought. The Luminar didn't just lose their technology when they retreated underground. They'd lost generations of scientific knowledge. They've been surviving, not advancing. Rise rubs her temples. Can we adapt our quantum resonance generators to address their needs? Theoretically, yes. Practically, Patel hesitates. We'd need more equipment than we have aboard, more power than we can generate, and more personnel than our entire crew. One problem at a time, Doctor. Rise brings up a map of human outposts in neighboring systems. If word of our situation spreads, how many colonial governors might look the other way if some equipment went missing? Patel studies the display, a slow smile spreading across his face. Enough to make a difference, especially if they knew what we were attempting. The ship's AI interrupts with an alert. Captain, 3 vessels have just dropped out of FTL travel at the edge of the system. Coalition registry. On the bridge, Tactical Officer Lieutenant Wei confirms the worst. Enforcement vessels, Captain. Heavy cruiser class. They're hailing us. The main screen activates, revealing the gray, chitinous face of Enforcement Commander Draz. His mandibles click in what humans had learned was the Vespid equivalent of clearing one's throat. Captain Elena Rice of Earth Vessel Horizon. You are hereby ordered to cease all planetary operations and prepare for immediate departure from this system. Failure to comply will result in the revocation of humanity's provisional coalition membership status. Ray stands at the center of her bridge, aware that every crew member watches her, that her next words will reshape not just their futures, but potentially humanity's place among the stars. Commander Draz, we respectfully decline. The Horizon is engaged in a humanitarian mission that we intend to complete. As the commander's face contorts with insectoid rage, Communications Officer Rodriguez turns from his station, eyes wide. Captain, we're receiving transmissions from multiple human vessels. They're coming to help. News travels faster than light across human colonies. The Horizon's defiance becomes legend overnight. Earth Command officially disavows their actions. But mysteriously, supply ships begin arriving from human outposts throughout the sector. Officially, they're lost. Unofficially, they'd bring critical components, additional personnel, and messages of support. The 6th pylon deployment succeeds where previous attempts failed. A stabilized magnetic field forms over a small region of the planet, strong enough to sustain Luminar life. Within this protected zone, the crystalline beings glow noticeably brighter, their movements more fluid, voices more resonant. It's working, Dr. Patel whispers, staring at the readings on his tablet. Dark circles under his eyes testify to nights without sleep, but his face shines with triumph. Limited range, but the resonance pattern is holding. Captain Rice stands beside him on the ridge overlooking the test site. Below, a team of human engineers works alongside Luminar assistants, adjusting calibrations on the gleaming pylon. Its central column pulses with energy that spreads outward in concentric blue rings across the landscape. "How many would we need to cover the critical population centers?" she asks. Patel's expression sobers. "At least 50. And each requires constant monitoring, manual adjustments. We don't have enough personnel, even with the volunteers from the supply ships." "What about automation?" "The magnetic fluctuations interfere with remote systems. Someone needs to physically monitor each pylon." Their conversation is interrupted as Lieutenant Wei approaches, her face grave. "Captain, the coalition blockade has been strengthened. 3 more enforcement vessels have arrived. They're scanning our every move." Rice watches humans and Luminar working side by side below. "Have they attempted to interfere with the supply ships?" "Not directly. They're documenting registry numbers, presumably to file sanctions later." Wei hesitates. "There's something else. Admiral Chen from Proxima Colony has made unofficial contact. He says if we can give them specifications, colonists there can begin constructing additional pylons." For the first time in weeks, Rice feels something like hope expand in her chest. "Send the schematics. Maximum encryption." That evening, Elder Xylos leads a human delegation deeper into the Luminar caverns than any outsider has ventured. They arrive at a vast chamber where the walls are embedded with crystals larger than houses, each pulsing with faint internal light. "Our ancestors," Xylos explains, his voice creating complex harmonics that echo through the space. When Luminar reach the end of their life cycle, their consciousness joins the ancestral matrix. Dr. Lin approaches one of the massive formations, scanner in hand. These energy readings, they're not random. There are patterns consistent with neural activity. "They remain aware," Xylos confirms. "But as our planetary field weakens, even these ancient ones fade. Your pylons have already strengthened them." This morning, for the first time in a century, the ancestors spoke to our children. Back aboard the Horizon Asterisk, the command crew gathers to assess their progress. The holographic display shows 7 functioning pylons, each creating a bubble of stabilized magnetic field. "At current deployment rates, we'll have 15 operational within a month," reports Chief Engineer Taylor. "Not fast enough," Rice responds, studying the planetary model. "The northern settlement will begin crystalline breakdown before we can extend protection to them." Communications Officer Rodriguez enters the room, breathless with excitement. "Captain, you need to see this." The main view screen activates, showing space beyond the planetary orbit. Where there had been emptiness, dozens of lights now appear, ships dropping out of FTL travel. Not coalition designs, human vessels of every description. Research ships, mining platforms, colony transports. "There must be 50 of them," whispers Wei. Rodriguez nods, eyes wide. More arriving every hour. And they're all carrying pylon components. Dr. Amara Okafor can't stop touching her face in shock. "You preserved all of it. The entire civilization." As the implications of the Luminar archives sink in, Dr. Okafor sits on a crystalline bench, overwhelmed. The holographic displays surrounding her show technological wonders from species extinct for thousands of years. Atmospheric modulators that could help terraform harsh worlds, energy systems that operate at near-perfect efficiency, medical techniques that could revolutionize human healthcare. "We were entrusted with their legacies," Elder Xylos explains, his crystalline form shimmering as he interfaces with the archive systems. Before the Coalition unified the galaxy, many species feared their knowledge would die with them. We became their memory. Captain Rice joins them, having left the orbital operations temporarily in Commander Jackson's hands. Her eyes widen at the displays. "This is why the Coalition abandoned you, not because you were dying, but because of what you know." Xylos's light dims momentarily. the Luminar equivalent of a somber nod. The Coalition prefers a selective interpretation of galactic history. Many of the civilizations we remember were deemed evolutionary failures, despite their remarkable achievements. Their technologies and philosophies contradicted Coalition doctrine. Lieutenant Park, normally quiet during diplomatic exchanges, steps forward. Captain, I've been analyzing historical data from the Luminar archives. There's something you need to see. The hologram shifts to display Coalition vessels from centuries past, performing weapons tests in the system. Detailed sensor readings show the aftermath. Destabilization patterns in the planetary core that match exactly the degradation currently threatening the Luminar. They did this, Park says quietly. The Coalition tested experimental gravitational weapons in this system 423 years ago. The resultant damage to the planetary core created the magnetic field decay. It wasn't natural selection. It was negligence they chose to hide by abandoning the Luminar. The chamber falls silent as the implications settle over the human team. Captain Rice's expression hardens. Record everything, she orders. Secure copies of all historical data, especially regarding the weapons tests. Dr. Okafor interfaces her systems with the Luminar archives, her fingers flying across holographic controls. The knowledge transfer works both ways, Captain. The Luminar can preserve our data too. Everything we know about quantum resonance technology, Earth history, human medicine. A worthy exchange. Elder Kylos agrees. If we survive, we will ensure humanity's achievements are never forgotten, regardless of Coalition policy. In another section of the caverns, engineer Maya Rodriguez works with a team of Luminar technicians, teaching them to maintain the resonance pylons. The crystalline beings learn with remarkable speed, their natural affinity for electromagnetic fields making them perfect students. The resonance frequency needs continuous adjustment as planetary conditions change, she explains, demonstrating on a control panel. Your natural sensitivity to fields makes you better at fine-tuning than our instruments. Young Luminar, their bodies glowing brighter in the strengthened field areas, gather around human teachers. Despite communication challenges, they develop a form of sign language that bridges the gap between harmonic resonance and human speech. Children from supply ships who accompanied their parents join the lessons, their natural adaptability creating bonds across species. Back aboard the Horizon Asterisk, Captain Rice holds an emergency briefing with her senior staff and representatives from the newly arrived human vessels. The Coalition didn't just abandon the Luminar, she tells the assembled humans. They caused their extinction event and covered it up. We're not just saving a species now, we're correcting a historical injustice. Dr. Patel, who hasn't slept in days, straightens in his chair. Then we have an even greater responsibility to succeed. The pylons are helping, but they're temporary measures. We need a permanent solution. Captain Rice nods grimly. And we need it before the Coalition decides our humanitarian mission has become too politically dangerous to tolerate. Captain Rice stands on the edge of a cliff overlooking the largest Luminar settlement, its light noticeably dimmer than when they arrived. Her communicator chimes with a message she's been dreading. Earth Command has officially disavowed the Horizon Asterisk and its crew, sacrificing them diplomatically to maintain Coalition relations. The message plays in her ear, Admiral Watkins' voice formal and distant. Captain Rice, the Security Council has voted unanimously. Your actions are classified as rogue operations effective immediately. All personnel under your command are suspended from service pending review. Earth cannot risk war with the Coalition over a single species. You are ordered to stand down. No mention of court-martial. No direct threat. Just abandonment wrapped in bureaucratic language. Rice switches off the communicator without replying, watching as human technicians and Luminar work together below. Despite everything, they've bought the Luminar 3 more months of life with their network of pylons. But the system remains fragile, incomplete. She's about to address her increasingly desperate crew when Communications Officer Rodriguez comes running, his face flushed with excitement. Captain, We're receiving thousands of transmissions from Earth, from the colonies, from research stations everywhere. They've been working on the problem too. Millions of people, universities, corporations, independent scientists. They've found something. Ray strides rapidly toward the command center they've established in one of the Luminar caverns. The communications array flickers with incoming data packages, more arriving every second. Dr. Patel and his engineering team are already analyzing the flood of information, their expressions shifting from exhaustion to disbelief. "It's incredible," Patel whispers. "They've been working on this since our first transmission. Multiple solutions, different approaches, all addressing pieces of the problem." Dr. Lin looks up from her station. Mumbai University's Geophysics Department has modeling data that explains why our pylons keep destabilizing. Massachusetts Institute of Technology has redesigned the resonance emitters to compensate. Proxima Colony engineers have figured out how to reduce power consumption by 40%. And that's just the beginning. Rodriguez adds, "Everyone who received our data has been working on it. People are holding fundraisers on Earth to support the effort. Children are sending designs, some of them surprisingly insightful." Ray studies the incoming schematics, allowing herself a moment of pure hope. Can we implement these improvements with our current resources? Not all of them, Patel admits, but enough to stabilize the current pylons, maybe extend their range. Buy us more time. The meeting is interrupted when the cavern trembles, dust and crystal fragments raining from the ceiling. Lieutenant Wei rushes in, face pale. Coalition vessels have fired on 3 of our supply ships attempting to break through the blockade. They've declared a full quarantine of the system. Rice clenches her jaw. Casualties. None confirmed. The ships withdrew before critical damage. But the message is clear. They're done tolerating our intervention. Through the command center entrance, Rice sees a group of young Luminar gathered nearby, their crystalline forms pulsing with anxiety. Despite their alien physiology, she recognizes fear when she sees it. These children know they're running out of time. Elder Xylos approaches, his movements slower than when they first arrived. Even in the protected zones, the magnetic deterioration continues to advance. "Your people have been recalled," he says, harmonics subdued. "We understand the sacrifice you have already made. Perhaps it is time to accept what comes." Rise watches the humans around her. Engineers who haven't slept in days, medical staff treating injuries from pylon accidents, communications officers who've been working around the clock to coordinate with the arriving vessels. None show any sign of giving up. "That's not how humans operate. Elder Xylos," she says quietly. "When the conventional options run out, that's when we get creative." Her tablet chimes with an incoming transmission, this one from Princeton University's Department of Theoretical Physics. The subject line reads, "Magnetic Heartbeat System, a permanent solution." The solution isn't military. It isn't even primarily technological. It's conceptual. Dr. Kailash, Meta's hologram, flickers in the command center as she explains her team's breakthrough. Her hands move through 3-dimensional models, pulling apart components and reassembling them with practiced precision. The individual pylons are like treating symptoms rather than the disease, she explains, dark eyes intense despite the millions of kilometers separating her from the Luminar world. "We need to address the core itself." Captain Rice studies the schematics with growing understanding. "You're proposing we create an artificial planetary core. A magnetic heartbeat," Dr. Meta corrects. "Not replacing the core, but establishing a resonance pattern that amplifies what remains of the natural field." The math is elegant, each component relatively simple, but working in perfect harmony. Engineer Patel leans forward, fatigue momentarily forgotten. "This would require precision on a scale we've never attempted. The slightest miscalculation could accelerate the planet's deterioration rather than healing it, which is why no single team could develop this solution." Meta nods. "It took thousands of scientists working together, each solving pieces of the puzzle." As the briefing continues, Lieutenant Y enters with urgent news. Coalition command ship is broadcasting throughout the system. They're demanding all human vessels depart within 6 hours or face containment measures. Rise exchanges glances with her senior staff. How many ships have arrived? 322 at last count. Y reports. Mostly civilian. Research vessels, private transports, mining platforms. They're carrying components built to Dr. Meta's specifications. Each ship constructed what they could manage with available resources. Dr. Lin shakes her head in wonder. They came without coordination, without orders. That's what the Coalition doesn't understand about us, Rice says quietly. We don't always need a central authority to act together. The Coalition enforcement fleet prepares for military action. Their formation is textbook perfect. Weapons systems powering up as targeting algorithms identify key human vessels. Commander Draz stands on his bridge, mandibles clicking with satisfaction at the overwhelming force under his command. The humans have been warned, he announces to his officers. Prepare to fire warning shots across their primary vessel groups. His tactical officer hesitates. Commander, our sensors detect unusual movement patterns among the human ships. On the tactical display, the human vessels are rearranging themselves, not into battle formation, something else entirely. They're assembling components in orbit, massive sections connecting with precision that belies their diverse origins. What are they building? Draz demands. The answer comes as Captain Reyes opens a system-wide channel. Her face appears on communication screens throughout the Coalition fleet. Commander Draz, we acknowledge your ultimatum. However, we are engaged in humanitarian aid to address an extinction-level event caused by Coalition weapons testing centuries ago. Draz's compound eyes narrow. These accusations are irrelevant. Your deadline remains unchanged. Before you fire on civilian vessels, Rice continues calmly, consider this. We humans lack your unified command structure. Each ship here made an independent decision to come. If you destroy some, others will take their place. Are you prepared to be remembered as the officer who massacred thousands of civilians performing humanitarian aid? In his command chair, Draz hesitates. Coalition military doctrine has protocols for enemy combatants, for terrorists, for pirates. But there is no established procedure for dealing with hundreds of civilian vessels engaged in coordinated but decentralized action. As the Coalition command staff debates their response, the human ships continue their orbital construction. The magnetic heartbeat takes shape, a gleaming apparatus unlike anything the galaxy has seen before. Its central core pulses with blue-white energy, quantum resonance generators arranged in concentric rings that mimic the planet's natural magnetic field lines. On the Horizon's bridge, Dr. Patel monitors the assembly with growing amazement. They're actually doing it. Component by component, exactly as designed. It's beautiful. Will it work? Rise asks simply. In theory, yes. He looks up from his console, eyes reflecting the holographic display. In practice, we're about to make history, one way or another. The caverns beneath the surface become a symphony of controlled chaos. Human engineers in protective suits work alongside luminar guides, threading pathways through crystalline formations that have existed for thousands of years. The resonance amplifiers must be positioned with micrometer precision. Dr. Helen Chen, a geophysicist who arrived on one of the research vessels, carefully adjusts a resonance node embedded in a crystalline wall. The device pulses with blue energy that harmonizes with the surrounding luminar structures. 2 young luminar assist her, their bodies serving as natural sensors more precise than any human instrument. Perfect, she murmurs as the frequency aligns. This node is calibrated. Throughout the vast underground network, 27 similar teams work in parallel, creating an intricate web of resonance points that will connect to the orbital heartbeat system. Every location has been calculated to amplify the artificial field that will soon emanate from above. On the surface, Captain Reyes oversees the preparation of the primary receiver array, a sprawling construction of quantum resonance spires and crystalline amplifiers built with combined human and luminar technology. The array will capture and distribute the energy from the orbiting heartbeat system, channeling it deep into the planet's core. Status report. She calls over the communication network that links all teams. Northern Hemisphere amplifiers at 93% alignment. Comes the response from Commander Jackson's team. Southern nodes calibrated and ready. Reports Dr. Lin. Core access shaft reinforcement complete. Engineer Rodriguez adds. But we're detecting increased instability at depth. The magnetic field is fluctuating wildly. Rice studies the sensor readings on her display. The planet is deteriorating faster than predicted. They're running out of time. Dr. Patel, what's our status on the orbital system? The engineer's voice comes through, strained with exhaustion. Final alignment in progress. Coalition vessels are maintaining position, but they're scanning us continuously. I think they're trying to determine if this is some kind of weapon. Keep me posted. We move forward regardless. In the deepest chamber, where the access shaft reaches toward the planet's outer core, Engineer Sophia Nakamura leads the most dangerous part of the mission. Her team works to install the primary resonance conductor, a device that will channel the magnetic heartbeat directly into the planet's molten layers. The heat is nearly unbearable despite their cooling suits. The magnetic fluctuations grow more violent as they work, disrupting equipment and causing painful interference with their neural implants. Watch that junction, Nakamura warns as a technician connects power conduits. One surge and we lose the whole conductor. A sudden tremor shakes the chamber. Crystalline fragments rain down from above. One of the supporting struts buckles, and a section of scaffolding collapses. 2 engineers are caught in the falling debris. The Luminar guide, a crystalline being named Ixel, moves with surprising speed. His body elongates, forming a supportive structure that prevents further collapse. The human team pulls their injured colleagues to safety, but Ixel remains, physically holding up tons of crystal and stone. I cannot maintain this position indefinitely. The Luminar's harmonic voice resonates through the chamber. 3 minutes, Nakamura promises, working frantically to stabilize the installation. We're almost there. Above, in orbit, the massive heartbeat apparatus descends slowly through the atmosphere, surrounded by shuttles maintaining its orientation. Its central core pulses with increasing intensity as it nears the receiver array. Coalition observers watch in stunned silence from their vessels, their threats now hollow as they witness something their utilitarian framework never accounted for. Sacrifice across species boundaries, with no expectation of equivalent return. In the control hub established near the primary receiver, Dr. Patel performs final system checks. His hands tremble from fatigue as he calibrates the resonance frequencies one last time. If this works, he says quietly to Captain Rice as she joins him, the galaxy will never view humanity the same way again. She stares at the massive apparatus now visible in the sky above. And if it doesn't, then at least they'll remember we tried. He initiates the activation sequence. For the right reasons. 1 year after first contact, the planet, renamed Novolux at the Luminar's insistence, has become the center of a diplomatic revolution within the Galactic Coalition. Luminar cities rise once more on the surface, their crystal spires capturing and refracting sunlight in displays visible from orbit. Ambassador Reyes, formerly captain, walks with Elder Gtylos through a garden where crystal formations and earth plants grow together in harmonious arrangements. The magnetic heartbeat hums beneath their feet, its rhythm now so familiar that most humans and Luminar barely notice it. The Coalition delegation arrives tomorrow, Rice says, pausing to admire a crystalline structure that pulses in time with a blooming earth rose beside it. 17 species, including some that have never sent representatives to human territories before. Xylos's form shimmers with amusement. They come to witness what they declared impossible. The first successfully reversed extinction event in recorded galactic history. They also come to access your archives, Rice adds. Word has spread about the knowledge your people preserved. Knowledge we now freely share, Xylos confirms. beginning with the evidence of weapons testing that caused our planet's deterioration. The revelation of that evidence had sent shockwaves through coalition political structures. Several elder races faced uncomfortable questions about past decisions, policies of abandonment, and the true meaning of their cherished natural selection doctrine. In the distance, a group of human and Luminar children play together in a field. The human children wear special suits that protect them from the planet's radiation, while allowing them to interact with their crystalline counterparts. Despite having no compatible biology, they've created games that bridge their differences. The Luminar using their light-generating abilities to create interactive patterns that human children interpret and respond to. Did you ever imagine this outcome when you diverted your ship to investigate our signal? Thylos asks. Rides watches as Dr. Pidal approaches across the garden. The engineer had remained on Novolux when most of the original crew returned to Earth, establishing a permanent research facility to study and maintain the magnetic heartbeat system. His once black-haired is now completely silver. Never, she admits. I only knew we couldn't leave you to die when we might help. A simple moral calculation that the Coalition found incomprehensible, Xylos observes. Patel joins them, tablet in hand. The maintenance protocols have been fully transferred to the Luminar engineering course, he reports. They've actually improved several components of the system. Their natural sensitivity to magnetic fields gives them insights our instruments couldn't detect. In orbit above, a new vessel enters the system, the Coalition diplomatic flagship. Unlike the enforcement vessels of a year ago, it comes alone and unarmed, a gesture of respect and recognition. The next day, in the grand meeting chamber constructed specifically for this historic moment, representatives from 17 Coalition species gather. Some float in gravitic suspension, others stand on mechanical assistance platforms, a few wear environmental suits. Despite their profound biological differences, all focus attention on the central platform, where Ambassador Rice and Elder Tylos await. The Coalition High Speaker, a being of gaseous composition contained in an ornate vessel, moves forward. Their translated voice fills the chamber. The Galactic Coalition formally recognizes the Terran Protocol, establishing that technologically capable species have an obligation to preserve sentient life whenever possible, regardless of evolutionary trajectory or resource calculation. Murmurs spread through the assembled representatives. For some, this represents a fundamental challenge to centuries of Coalition philosophy. For others, it signals a welcome evolution in thinking. As the ceremony concludes, Ambassador Rias exits to the observatory constructed atop the highest Luminar spire. There she finds a human child and a young Luminar standing together at a viewport, gazing at the stars. "That's where I was born," the human child says, pointing to a distant sun. The Luminar child pulses with curious light. "Will you tell me about it? I will remember it forever." Rise watches their silhouettes against the cosmic backdrop, so different in form, yet connected by something the Coalition had never fully valued: curiosity about the other, and the willingness to help without calculating return. The forgotten race and the newcomers who refuse to leave anyone behind, together building a future neither could have imagined alone.